Hey guys, what's up? Today we're going to make a wooden pot hanger. As you can see, we basically are working with floor tiles. As you can see, the wood I'm using is actually for wooden floor. So we have these edges that we need to cut down into uniform shapes, and that's the first thing that we're going to start with. So before we can get started, we just need to adjust our table saw and make sure that the planks are going to be uniform once we cut them. So now that our saw is set up, the next thing to do is to start cutting our wood. Okay, so now our planks are nice and uniform, and the next thing we need to start doing is cutting them in half so they are the right size for our frame. Okay, so after that exercise, we can see that our planks are nice and uniform. And the next step will be just to trim the width of these planks because we don't want our frame to be too thick, and that's going to be our next step. Here we can see that we've adjusted our saw and we're just going to start trimming down our planks. Okay, so all our planks have been cut in half, and you can see that they are nice and uniform. Unfortunately, the blade did leave a few marks on the wood, but we will sort this out by sanding it down a bit later on. So our next step is to cut the edges of the wood at a 45-degree angle so we're able to join the pieces of wood nicely at the end to give them a nice and round finish. One mistake that I did make here is not to set my saw depth at the correct height. This meant that my first cut was a bit short and I actually had to adjust my saw depth and cut each wood twice in order to have them nice and uniform and the same length at the end of the day. So with our 45-degree cuts done, here you can see how easy it's going to be to join these edges and the nice finish that we get at the end. So like I said earlier on, we do have these blade marks on our wood, so the next step will be just to sand them down and give them a nice finish. So you can see how we are going to join the wood, and we're just going to use the small nails just to join the wood together. They are very small, and the idea behind this is so we don't actually see the nails at the end of the day. So just before I started joining the planks, I actually saw that having them all the same length didn't really look good for me. So I just went and made the top and bottom sections a bit shorter, and I feel that this is going to give it a bit more of an interesting look. So the next part is just joining our wood with our nails, and this is a bit of a time lapse just to show you how I'm building the frame. So here we can see that our frame is finished, but there are a few edges that stand out a bit. So we're just going to use the sander just to get a nice rounded edge on each of the corners. The next step is to drill a hole where we can hang our pot from. I'm going to use a 10mm drill tip, and this should give us enough space to put a piece of string through. So I've put a piece of rope through the drill hole that we made, and I'm just going to make a basic knot to keep the string in place where we can then hang our pot from. I'm also going to use a lighter just to burn off the edges of the rope so that we have a nice and clean finish. So here is our final product. I've just hanged a pot on a piece of string that we put in place, and now we have a freestanding pot that we can use. I'm going to use this for outside use, put a coat of paint over it, and then it's done. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe for more woodworking content. Hey, what's up guys? Today we're making a wooden knife from scratch. Okay, so the first thing is to create a template for the knife that we are going to cut out. So I just grabbed a knife from the kitchen that we're just going to use to get the basic outline and fill in the gaps. So now that we have an outline of the knife, we're going to grab our jigsaw and just go on the outside of the line that we drew and basically cut out this template that we're going to refine right on. Just before we start refining our knife, we need to get a basic outline of the top side dimensions of the knife as well. So I'm just using the same knife as we used previously, just drawing the outline again on the top so that we have a reference point from there as well. Okay, so now we're just going to start refining our knife. We're going to use the belt sander just to get the handle of the knife correct, and after that we can move over to the blade. Here we can see that we've got the handle of our blade refined a bit now. We'll also be refining that as we go on, but the basic shape is there and we can move over to refining the blade section of the knife. As you're working on the blade section of the knife, this is maybe a good time to ask you guys, if you enjoy woodworking content, to like and subscribe, as this helps the channel grow and make more content. Here we can see that the top section of our knife blade is now complete and we've got the basic shape correct. So now the next step will be to sharpen our blade and get that final knife look. So here we finally have our final product where we created a knife from scratch. I'm quite happy with how it turned out. The blade is quite sharp and overall I'm quite happy. So I'll check you guys in the next one. Cheers. Hey everybody, today we are making a cutting board from scratch. The first thing we have to do, as in with any project, is to get our measurements correct. All I'm doing here is getting the length of the cutting board, and from here we'll basically be sketching out our board design. Well, I'm no artist, but I gave it my best shot to get a cutting board design that works. And while we're looking at this might be a good time to mention, if you guys like woodworking videos, please like and subscribe, as it helps the channel to grow and continue with its content. All I'm doing here is basically getting an outline of the shape that I would like my cutting board to be, making some adjustments, erasing the mistakes I made, until I'm happy with the final result. Once our design is finished, it's time to grab the jigsaw and get cutting away. I'm just using the jigsaw to cut around the edges of our design and get the rough shape of a cutting board ready, where we can then refine it later on. Here we can see the rough shape of our cutting board. Obviously we need to start sanding this down just to get the edges smooth from the marks left by the jigsaw. Here we can see that the surface is now nice and smooth, and we can start shaping the corners of our cutting board. After all that sanding, we finally have smooth edges around our cutting board and the general shape of the cutting board is also correct. Just before we finish things off, I just want to sand down the surface of the cutting board as well, just to make sure that it has a nice smooth surface. Now with the cutting board pretty much done and sanded down, the last step is to make a small hole in the handle that we can use to put a rope through and hang it on a wall. I'm using a wooden drill tip to make the hole within the cutting board handle. I'm doing this really slow just to make sure that I don't chip the wood and that everything's perfect. The final step is to finish things off with a piece of string added to our handle. And here we have it, our final cutting board made from scratch. I hope you enjoyed the video and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Cheers!